Good afternoon. Welcome to the Aortic Kitchen.
Hi guys, it's Chef Rob and our aortic dietitian Mindy Seltzer, and welcome to season 2. This is the start of our new year and our new format. So just give you a quick rundown of what we're going to do. We're going to start with Mindy today. And she is going to do about we got about 30 minutes set aside for her to do a presentation on sodium and potassium, as you see. And then when she finishes, I'm going to do a little short cooking demo that'll relate to that. And then we're going to do this twice a month, okay? So the first and third Wednesday of every month. This is the first. The third Wednesday, we flip it. So on the 21st of February, I'll take the 30 minutes and Mindy will get the 15 or so. And I'll do a full cooking demo and Mindy will follow up with a related topic on nutrition. So really glad you guys could make it, whether you're here live or if you are joining us later on the YouTube. And if you have questions while you're here live, please type them into the chat. And I think we're going to try to let Mindy do her presentation and then go into some questions. If there's a lot of questions, we may jump over to me and let me do my demo and then finish up with Q&A again. Okay, so with that explanation, which is longer than I hoped, I'm going to give it to Mindy and let Mindy go because I'm going to disappear. It's her show.
I'm going to do a little housekeeping. I'm a registered dietitian, retired. This is informational, factual. Always seek help of your dietitian or your physician for what your guidelines are specifically for sodium and potassium, especially if you're taking potassium type-based medications and your diuretics. Dietitian's the one that's going to help you regulate it. I'm specifically just talking about the foods today. Sodium and excuse me. Sodium and potassium for aortic health. Our goals today are healthy dietary guidelines, which is for everyone for good health. What are sodium and potassium? Why are they important? And where do they come from in our diets? Foods and beverages we consume have a profound impact on our health. We consume diet-related chronic diseases such as cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, liver disease, some cancers pose a major public health problem in Americans. Today, 60% of adults have one or more related chronic diseases. As we know, you all have chronic aortic disease. So there are 4 overarching guidelines. The guidelines are supported by recommendations that were planned over a number of years. The guidelines come out every 5 years, so the new guidelines will be out in 2025. You read the slide. It talks about the guidelines. You can just type in dietary guidelines for American and you'll get the whole website. Life stage, custom nutrients, dense, and you will hear that term quite frequently, nutrient-dense food and beverage choices. Because what our goal is to have nutrient-dense foods without a lot of calories that provide us the most nutrition. In addition to the guidelines, several dietary principles to help inform decisions about nutrient-dense foods and choices will achieve healthy dietary patterns. Presently, we're only speaking about sodium and potassium, but you will see other information in the slides. Sodium is a mineral you can find naturally in food, such as celery and milk. Celery happens to be one of the highest vegetables, highest sodium in vegetables. Sorry about that. Manufacturers also add sodium to processed food. Like, does everyone know what's processed food? Bread, sandwich meat, any pre-processed meals, vegetables with sauces, etc. They all add sodium to their foods. It's also added to things such as soy sauce, ketchup, even mayonnaise, which is not that much, but pay attention to the sodium content. And later on in the presentation, I'm going to go over how to read the label. So sodium, why is it essential? It's one of the body's electrolytes, and it's minerals the body needs in relatively large amounts. Sodium actually helps carry the electric charge throughout our bodies. Most of the sodium is located in the blood and the fluid around the cells. Sodium helps the body keep a normal balance. It also plays a key role in normal nerve and muscle function. Sodium gets into our body through food and drink, and it leaves primarily by sweat and urine. Healthy kidneys are really good at maintaining that sodium level. When sodium consumption and loss are not in balance, then we have significant body effects. Too low is hyponatremia, too high is hypernatremia. These all help control blood volume. Sodium is the fluid in blood around the cells, and the body continually monitors the blood volume and sodium concentration. Most of you have medication that's keeping that blood pressure down, so it's helping you regulate that effect of the sodium in your body. What happens to the sodium in the body? As I said before, it balances fluid and the ways the nerves and muscles work. The kidneys, I said before, balance the sodium. Kidneys release it if we have too much. If the kidneys can't remove enough sodium, it builds up in the blood. People that have had some kidney damage, some of you have had that when you dissected. So sodium attracts and holds water, and so the blood volume rises. If the kidneys can't remove enough sodium, it builds up in the blood. Your heart has to work harder, pump more blood. I just changed slides. I'm sorry. Deficiency in potassium. I'll go back to this. They've changed slide. Okay. Some people are more sensitive to the effects of sodium than others. Potassium is also an essential nutrient used in maintaining fluid and electrolyte balance. It's also critical in transmission of the impulses. A deficiency in potassium causes fatigue, irritability, hypertension, and the blood pressure, because as I said before, it regulates the sodium potassium balance. And if you're not on dialysis or have a special condition, you rarely can get an overdose of potassium from natural sources. Signs of high potassium in blood levels include weakness, paralysis, and heart palpitations. Science also supports the idea that every stage life provides an opportunity to make food choices that promote health and well-being and achieve and maintain appropriate weight status and reduce the dietary-related chronic diseases. So what we're talking about now is for aortic hope, but it can be used for everybody except people under 12. Healthy eating can promote health and reduce chronic diseases. So in 2020, the advisory committee came up with a report which examined the science and key topics related to diet and health. So if you look on the figure on the slides, which you can read at any time, the strong and moderate evidence found lower risk of all-cause mortality, lower risk of cardiovascular disease, lower risk of disease and mortality in cardiovascular disease, lower LDL cholesterol, lower blood pressure, possibly reduce the lower risk of obesity, body mass index, lower type 2 diabetes, and favorable, this isn't a cooking class, favorable bone health, including the lower risk of hip fracture. So how do we do in our sodium? Well, let's put it this way. 90% of us exceed the chronic disease and risk reduction amounts for sodium. In other words, we have way, way too much salt in our diets. So when we try to limit our foods that are higher in sugar, saturated fat, and sodium, you can see that the limit for sodium is 2,300 milligrams a day. 1 teaspoon of salt is 2,400 milligrams of sodium. So you can see how much influence table salt has on our diet. A 1/4 teaspoon is 600 milligrams. Sodium is an essential nutrient, primarily consumed as salt. So our sodium intake, as I said before, is 2,300 milligrams for all age groups over 13. The nutrient-dense choices in the healthy U.S. dietary pattern provides about 60 to 100% of the age-specific chronic disease risk reduction for sodium across levels, ranging from about 1,000 to 2,200 milligrams a day. The WHO recommends only 2,000 milligrams a day. It will be changing because the new recommendations will be coming out for the 25 till 30. If you look at all these charts, it's the current intakes, and I'm looking at specifically sodium, which is the last one. Men exceed sodium by 97%, and women exceed it by 82%. So we are way over our sodium intake, no matter how hard we try, if you eat out and you eat a lot of processed foods. The average intake is high, and because it's found in so many foods, you have to do a whole bunch of different things to lower your sodium. Careful choices in your food groups to reduce the intake, lower sodium intake when cooking at home more often, using nutrition label facts, and I'll go over the label real quick in a little bit. Less sodium, reduced sodium, or no salt added, and flavoring foods with herbs and spices instead of salt-based or personal culture. Just remember, anytime something says garlic salt, celery salt, seasoning salt, there is the word salt in that. As I said before, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 600 milligrams, 1 teaspoon, 2,400 milligrams. Recently, the National Academy of Sciences updated the recommended potassium for men 19 and older to 3,400 milligrams potassium per day, and females of the same age group, 2,600. So you're going to have varying information of anywhere from 3,400 to 4,500 milligrams of potassium. As I said, if it's coming from food, chances are we won't have a problem. If you are taking dietary supplements, or your physician is recommending you take potassium because of the being excreted through your medications, talk to him also about foods and potassium, if there's any way you can substitute some food for a lower dose of potassium. Potassium is found in a large range of foods: green leafy vegetables, tomato, eggplants, pumpkins, carrots, beans, dairy products, meat, fish, and nuts. And if you see, I wrote a small list of the top 10 items that you should have in your diet to get your increased potassium. The best forms of vegetables. As you know, we go vegetable centric in our diets because that's where we get nutrient dense foods, lower calories, and a lot of healthful nutrients. The best form of vegetables are fresh or frozen with no added sauces or salt. I'll label reading again. Canned, that either say low salt or no salt. Celery contains 35 milligrams of sodium in a stock, but compared to other foods such as ham or other vegetables, there are some other vegetables that we should limit to about 1/2 cup per day. Those are beets, beet greens, carrots, most all the greens, chard, peas, lima beans, tomato juice, tomato sauce, tomato paste, tomato puree. The sodium values range from 35 to 155 for one cook of any of the above vegetables. Celery, again, is the highest, and 1 cup of sodium is 5-inch by 3/4-inch sticks. That's a lot of sodium, and if you are having problems, they may recommend you limit sodium in your diet. So how do we know what products have sodium in it and potassium? Well, here's a label for frozen lasagna. The highlighted colors are some of the things that have changed in 2020 when they redid the label. If you look at the top, it tells you how many servings are a container. So this package of lasagna says it's 4 servings, and it's a 1 cup serving. I had a 1 cup serving, I do. So this is 1 cup. You can see it in front of me. 1 cup. I don't know anybody eats that 1 cup of lasagna, at least in my house. So according to this package, there's 280 milligrams of sodium. 280 calories. Sodium was, you'll have to read it because I don't have a good view, is 850 milligrams in the 1 cup serving. So if you have 2 cups, you have 2/3 of your sodium for the day. If you look at the bottom of the label, you can see potassium is 510 milligrams. So you're going to get sufficient quantity of potassium in your diet. Because of the current inadequate nutrient-dense foods and beverages across the food groups, the labels, if you read, has calcium, potassium, fiber, and vitamin T. Those are considered public health concerns for the general population because low intakes are associated with health concerns. If a healthier diet is consumed, the amount of calcium, potassium, and fiber can meet the recommendations. Encouraged to shift to increase the vegetables, fruits, beans, whole grains, and dairy intakes of these under amount consumes closer to the recommendations. Sometimes we have to have fortified foods. As you know, most of us do not consume enough vitamin D in general, so try to drink a little bit more milk or cheese or cottage cheese, and you can buy no salt cottage cheese or yogurt. The dietary considerations for the general population in adults have the considerations we talked about before: fiber, calcium, saturated fats, sodium, and an interesting fact is 45% of adults ages 18 and older are living with hypertension. That's pretty much half our population. As we get older, hypertension increases. So it's really important for us to really work at reducing our sodium content to prevent increased blood pressure, cardiovascular disease, and stroke, and also reduce the pressure on our aorta because pressure on our aorta increases potential damage. So since we're talking about nutrient-dense choices, and that was pretty much the theme of the dietary guidelines for Americans, if you look at some of the categories, you can see that sodium, I'm sorry, Rob. Sodium is one of the things we have to reduce. If you look on the graph, it tells you what we typically use on the bottom and what nutrient-dense products are on the top. And you can read that yourself. The U.S. Dietary Patterns is a framework for healthy eating for everybody. The most common is the Healthy Mediterranean Style Diet Pattern, healthy vegetarian dietary patterns, and those are carried from the previous recommendations of 15 through 20. The dietary recommendations have the same core elements. You're welcome to go online and look up DGA, and they'll have a whole program that you can read that gives you more in detailed information. Sodium and potassium are regulated through medications, physicians, and diet. So if you have any questions related to sodium or potassium, please feel free to ask. If you'd like to write questions or you have further information, you're curious about nutrition, don't hesitate to also add those, and we'll look into it for our future classes. Thank you for your participation and listening. I'm now turning it over to Chef Rob.
Well done, Mindy.
Well done, Mindy.
Fair.
Can you guys
Okay.
email me that link so that I can turn around and put that inside of the chat? And then also, when you're done sharing, I will get Chef Rob on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah, we can just stop the share real quick. Okay. So, second here.
Chef Rob poking his head in.
There you go. Stop sharing. There we go.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Well, I hope you folks have some questions to ask, because we're going to be happy to answer all of them. So
Well, let's say hi to some of the people that jumped into a chat here with us.
yeah, I'd love to know who's here
Yeah,
today.
right away. Molly was the first one. She said, "Let's get cooking."
Yep.
You might remember Katrina. She's saying hi, greetings from Galloway.
Wow.
Our lovely Karen Anderson stopped in to say hola. Melissa Yee, lots of love here, hello. And John Brenny, who should be on the road, jumped in to say steak. I made a comment. So Karen says, it seems challenging to take in the minimum amount of potassium. And I said, it really does. Steak is about 330 and 3 ounces. So I have to eat more steak.
The potassium is probably one of our highest difficult dietary intakes.
Yeah, it seems very challenging. And then she said, Karen says, reading labels makes me depressed. I would absolutely eat at least 2 cups of lasagna, and then that's only one part of the meal.
Correct.
She's gonna go on an air diet.
That's why we
turn around, Rob.
Fresh is best.
Turn around, Rob.
Oh, okay. But fresh is best. That way you control the sodium to a certain level, and also the potassium by doing more yourself. And that's what we do, push the no added salt, because typically there is more than enough sodium in the foods that you buy and eat. So even the fresh vegetables and fruits and things do have some naturally occurring sodium and potassium. So no need to add more. It's so, because it's so easy to overdo it. Even, gosh, one of the worst things that I find, I don't know about you guys, I'm a cereal eater. Ever since I was a kid, I've been eating cereal for breakfast, and cereal's terrible. I mean, and their half cup or 3/4 cup servings have, almost, some of them have 500 milligrams of sodium in them. Some are lower if you search for them, but it's easy. And who eats a half a cup of cereal? Okay, that's nobody, no one that I know, other than Mindy, might eat a half a cup of cereal. But still, so those things just add up, and they're they're the hidden, they're the ghost sodium that you consume every day that you don't even know is there if you don't pay attention. So it is really easy, and that's why 97% of the men, the male population in the United States, consumes too much. Only 3% consume the proper amounts of sodium. And what was it for women in the 80s? So it's really difficult. And that's probably the biggest argument against using processed foods, pre-processed foods. Because besides the sodium, there's a lot of other things in there too that we can discuss all day about all the additives and things for flavor and freshness and preservatives and so on. That there's all sorts of discussions. So fresh is best.
We have had, let me make one more comment.
Yeah,
We
keep
have
going.
had reduction in sugars in a lot of food products. They have started reducing sodium in some products. One of the things I like to do is, like, a lot of people love V8, and it has a tremendous amount of sodium. Then there's the no salt V8, which absolutely has no flavor at all. So blend a couple together if you really want that V8 taste. You can do the same thing with tomato juice, because those are notoriously 800 milligrams of sodium.
Right. Tomatoes in general typically have a large amount of salt because they can be quite bland without them. That's what we've had that in earlier programs. I've talked about. I use mostly imported tomatoes. Those tend to have the least amount of salt. I mean, you can get no salt added from Hunt's, some of the other major brands, but I prefer doing the Italian brands that they can have as low as just like 5 milligrams in a serving, or sometimes 0, because there's no added salt at all to any of those products. So you don't have to buy a salt-free; it already is. But tomato juice, all those tomato products are notorious. So let me show you what I wanted to do today.
Oh, we're not done. You guys cut me off from the chat.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
So Velda, she dropped in to say hello, everyone.
Hey, Velda.
And while you were turned the wrong way, Melissa said, "Cute backside."
Ah, see?
There is no backside.
Aw. So
I got the flattest butt in the United States.
So we do have a couple questions before we jump in here. Melissa says, "Not a seafood diet."
Correct.
Correct. Okay.
Do not eat. See, you do not see food and automatically eat.
Oh,
You have
okay.
to make
Fair enough.
choices.
And so Molly says, "Is it true that sodium in no salt seasoning is actually replaced with potassium?"
Correct.
No.
No salt. No salt seasonings. Are you talking about
Brand?
the brand No Salt?
It's not capitalized.
Say it again.
Yeah.
Is it true
So-
that sodium in no salt seasoning is actually replaced with potassium?
That is incorrect.
That is incorrect. Molly, no, that's not true.
Well, it depends. Let's clarify that, because that was a discussion when we had the pharmacist on a couple weeks ago. Any of the white salt substitutes. So, like there is a product called No Salt or New Salt. There's also Morton's makes a reduced sodium salt, which is a blend. But any of the white salt substitutes have potassium chloride in them. Okay. Now, something like this that I'm using, this is a salt-free seasoning blend. So it's a no salt added. You would call it a no salt, salt-free. Okay, salt-free 17, but there is no potassium in this at all.
Again, label reading becomes important, because you'll know they have to have labels on them to tell you what those main ingredients we talked about are.
Right. So
potassium included.
things like this salt-free 17, if you can find it, is hard to find. Mrs. Dash, who has now, I don't know, 20 different formulations of flavor profiles, those all are not made with potassium salts. Those are just herb blends. Okay, and that's what you really want to look for if you're going to buy one of those seasoning blends that are pre-made, or you can do them yourself. I have a cabinet full of homemade stuff. Besides my regular dried herbs and seasonings, but I have made my own bagel seasoning. I have my own lemon pepper that I made myself without any salt. I have a fajita seasoning, a fajita spice, all these things that I make without adding any salt. Because if you look, even things like chili powder, let me tell you, chili powder is loaded with salt. So you got to be really careful with those.
Label reading.
Label reading, exactly, everything that you do. So, all right, what else we got, Josh?
Laguerre says, "Hello, I'm watching."
Okay.
Awesome.
We love when she says hi. Molly says, thank you for the answer. Melissa says, I use vinegar and or lime/lemons to produce the flavor.
Yes.
Very good choices.
Acids. We've talked about acids are a key component. Remember your 4 major or 5 major tastes, sweet, salt, sour, and bitter, and umami. So if we take the salt out of that configuration, then you really need to increase, other things, and not necessarily sugar all the time, but acids make foods bright. So lemon juice, vinegars, wines, anything like that, that will brighten up the flavors with that. But you don't need a ton, but just a little bit of acid goes a long way in food to highlight flavors.
Okay.
Melissa, you're right.
So right before I let you go to cook, we just have 2 last comments here. Karen says, maybe I can hire Rob to make my meals and ship them to me.
Oh, what?
Cook and ship meals to her.
Oh, okay.
They
won't
be cheap.
So it won't be blue. It'll be the tie-dye apron box.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. So Molly would love recipes for your no salt seasonings, and Laguerre has asked, is it better to eat Celtic salt than table salt?
No. Salt is salt.
Salt is salt, Laguerre. All right, Chef, take it away.
Okay, let's clarify that. So there's always a clarification for all these things. So if you're measuring salt, now table salt, regular, the little can of iodized salt, quarter teaspoon, that's finely granulated. So if you measure out a quarter teaspoon of that, you're going to have more salt in that quarter teaspoon than if you use a kosher salt, which are crystals. So you'll get less salt in that quarter teaspoon by weight. All right. A quarter teaspoon of salt is about 1.5 grams. That's of table salt. So of kosher salt, it's going to be closer to 1.25. So you reduce it that way. And then if you go with, coarser salts and sea salts, again, depending on how they're ground, but gram for gram, they're pretty much all the same amount of sodium. And the only difference with the sea salts is that they also tend to have other minerals still in them from the ocean that is not taken out, where like in table salt, it's just sodium chloride and some anti-caking stuff, things like that. So that's where why people say their sea salts taste so much better, because they do. They have other minerals in them.
But you also get a larger dose of salt on your tongue when you're eating those sea salts.
Right, when you're eating those larger crystals. Yes, they do jump out at you. So I hope that answered your question without too much confusion. Okay. I tend not to use table salt very much at all, because it is too easy to put way too much in, though I pretty much cook without added salt. So what I'm going to try to do today, and what we're part of this format is, I'm going to do a little cooking demo, 10 minutes or so, that will relate to what Mindy said. So one of the things that people really like, chicken, okay, in our diet, it's a very common food. It's affordable and so on. But one thing that we miss is that when you, let's forget about the talk about whether or not you should eat skin, but it's not so bad if you pull the fat out from the back. But is that crispy skin chicken. And typically that is done with salting, okay, because salt pulls the moisture out. And what is the definition of crisp? Crisp is the absence of moisture. Something to be crisp, that has to have all the water taken out. Then it becomes crisp and crunchy. So how are we going to do that without using salt? So I have a chicken breast here, just a regular bone-in chicken breast with the skin on still. And so we're going to work on replacing the moisture and also making it taste real good without the salt. So a couple things. And I do have a recipe I'm going to post online for you later. So if you wash your chicken breast, that's up to you. The USDA does not recommend washing chicken anymore at home because people tend to cross-contaminate. You splash water and it's got chicken blood in it, and it goes on your counter, or it gets in your towel, or it gets on something, and then you end up, cross-contaminating. So they really recommend not washing chicken anymore. Anything that's on it, you're not washing off the salmonella. Don't worry about it, but you'll destroy it in the cooking process as long as you cook at 165 degrees. Then you don't have to worry about it. So personal preference. Okay,
Can I mention something, sir?
please do.
Okay, just remember to also, nutrition labels are on chicken for a reason as well. And you want to look at how much sodium is in that chicken through the processing. It can be as high as 20 to 30%.
Yep, another ghost hidden
Hidden
salt
salt.
product. When you look at the label, you don't even look at the nutrition label. Just look on the front of the package, and it'll tell you the chicken has a certain percentage of moisture added, and that is a saline solution. They pump chicken full. The inexpensive stuff that you buy in the stores and so on can be 20%. We saw turkey breast because I like to get smoke my own turkeys. Again, had one as high as 22% in the store of a bone-in turkey breast. So I did find another brand that was only 5%, and that's about the minimum allowable max, that you can do. So you can get chicken that has about 5%. Some of the major brands are good like that now, or go for the air chilled chicken and not the ice chilled, and those typically don't have that. Why have they done that? Why is all these major brands pump these chickens full of saline solution? Two reasons. One, economics, because you're paying for water weight, not for chicken meat. So you're now paying whatever, if it's a whole chicken, $2 a pound, and it's 20% water. So, they win on that one. Number two is, with all the cooking recommendations of cooking your poultry to at least 165 degrees, people do tend to overcook chicken. And as a result, it gets dried out. They always talk about the dried out turkey at Thanksgiving. So when they pump them full of the saline solution, it pretty much guarantees it stays moist, even if you happen to overcook it. So two reasons. But again, it all boils down to reading labels. And if you buy a chicken like that and you make soup out of it, all that moisture ends up in your soup, in your stock, whatever, so you got to be careful still. It's still going to be there. Okay, so I have a chicken breast here. And what you're going to do, if you have washed it, or even right out of the package, you do want to take a paper towel and collect as much moisture as you can. And then also, I take my hand, sometimes a knife, depending on it. The pre-processed, the pre-cut chickens aren't as nice as doing it yourself. But
I nicknamed that seduction of a chicken.
okay, so pull back the skin. If there's a great amount of fat, you can scrape it off or remove it, but we need some fat. But this one has very little. This is pretty much translucent, the skin here. So pull that back. Again, pat dry, pat, get all that moisture that you can out of it. Okay. Now, we're going to try to add some flavor as well, besides just doing the crispy skin. So first, I'm going to hit it with some black pepper. We always have to season. We just don't have the salt on the table. That's all. A little pepper. I have here, I made it's just chopped garlic and olive oil. And we can put that underneath the skin here and just rub that around. Okay. Add a lot, and parsley. Now, if you don't like garlic, you don't have to use garlic. Use something else. Okay, or just leave it out.
You do it with chopped onion.
Right. You can do shallot. You can do chopped onion. Do anything. So here the oil. Okay. And then I'm going to use some of my famous salt-free 17. One of my favorite seasonings. We use it really good on fish. So
while he's talking about that, we buy the commercial jar of the salt-free 17. And honey, when did that one expire?
You don't want to know. Several years ago. It takes a long time to use this.
But it just decreases the flavor. Nothing goes wrong with the product.
So that was about a quarter teaspoon. I had measured it earlier. In fact, see, I had it here. Oop, now I spilled. So I had it right there for you to put onto the chicken. And anything else, if you want to put a little extra olive oil, you can. It's just going to add more, keep it moist and going besides the fat calories, but a little bit of extra virgin. There wasn't much with the garlic, so just a quick little couple dribbles, all right? Now we're going to fold that skin back over. And my recipe, I'll tell you to have all this done ahead of time, all these things, but I want to demo them as we go. So instead of salt,
You're frozen.
I'm frozen.
You're not
Josh,
frozen to
right.
me. Keep going, please.
Okay.
Okay. So something I learned from a chef when I was at Le Cordon Bleu, is a Vietnamese chef. And what they do to make poultry crispy is they use cornstarch. Cornstarch makes everything crispy. You know, it's high starch, low protein, very little protein. So I took some cornstarch and I put some smoked paprika in it. So it's a tablespoon of cornstarch, quarter teaspoon of smoked paprika, just mix it around. Then I'm going to blend into it a couple teaspoons of lemon juice. You can use fresh lemon juice, you can use jarred, doesn't matter. And you need to then stir that around and get it all dissolved. You know, the cornstarch needs to be cold liquid, not hot. And get that dissolved. It's going to make almost like a really thin batter. Trying to get it all up from the bottom. Okay, got most of it there. And then just put this all over the top of your chicken, the skin. If you get some on the inside, it's okay. But, you know, really put it on there pretty well. You're getting color, you're getting some flavor. Okay. You have nice color. Okay.
Paprika in there too.
Now, what I'm going to do with this, the other thing you want to do now is put it in the refrigerator, uncovered. All right. Chicken goes uncovered. And for several hours, if you can, or even overnight is better, because you really want the refrigeration is going to suck all the moisture out of that skin and the outside of the chicken. We'll add that moisture back, don't worry, but we want that skin to be really, really dry. So you take that and put it back in the refrigerator. All right. Now I have made, I have a ceramic, basically a pie dish. I've put some vegetables in there that I like. I have carrots and beets and some onion and celery and some herbs and some parsnip. What I use for these, by the way, here's another good one to show you. We just discovered this recently. Is a frozen, like, you know, fresh, then frozen. It's the choice. So this is a frozen root vegetables. Really healthy, real good for you, lots of fiber. Okay, and this contains carrots, sweet potatoes, beets, and parsnips. All right, and they're cut just like that, nice big slices, and the beets are cubed, and the sweet potatoes are cubed, and the parsnips and carrots are cut into rondelles or rounds. And now, let's look at the label real quick, because surprise, surprise, it's nothing but the vegetables, ingredients, beet, carrot, sweet potato, parsnips. And if you don't know this, when you read a label, the ingredients are listed in order of dominance. So there are more beets than anything, then carrots, then sweet potato, and lastly, parsnips. Any ingredient label you read will do that way, order of dominance. So the most common ingredient in it will be listed first, and the least will be last, okay? But, so there's nothing else here. There's no salt, there's no water, there's nothing. But still, because of these vegetables, we have 40 milligrams of sodium in a 3/4 cup serving. And we have 250 milligrams of potassium, which is 6% of your daily needs, and only 2% of the sodium. So there is some here if you're really, really counting, all right? But again, you've got to be aware. Sometimes you'll be surprised of what is there and, you know, what isn't. So I would take my chicken here, and I'm just going to put it on top of my Rooty Tooty vegetables. A little piece of skin there. We can cut that one off. And I will then put it in the refrigerator to dry out, okay? Whether it takes, you know, again, the more time, the drier it'll get. So, wait. And now, if I did this, you know, in the morning or the night before, I come home, take it out a half hour before I'm ready to start cooking and just pop it in the oven. And there I go. Now, what do we think it's going to look like? Well, let's see. Now, before you put it in, I do tend to drizzle a little bit of olive oil over the top of it. Yeah, so to replace some of that, make sure that it's we still have moisture, not that no water. Fat is not moisture. Okay, there is no water in fat. It makes things taste moist, but there is no moisture, so that will not interfere with the crisping of the skin by putting the olive oil on the outside.
Chef, did you mention the paprika?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Did you mention smoked?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
And it's in the recipe. So let's take a look. As long as I don't fall over. Okay, so I've had this in a 375 oven
Back
for
to the
about
camera.
45 minutes.
Your back's to the camera.
I know my back is to the camera. I cannot get into the oven without it.
Okay.
Okay. So, times that happens. Isn't that a pretty little hot plate? We picked that up in the Caribbean, little handmade hot plate. Little things in our travels. So, here is my chicken. Ready to come into the camera, Josh, with this baby.
Yeah, bring it up close.
Okay. If you can hear this,
Nope.
hear that scrapey. This hot pad does not work real well. Let's change that. As I burn my fingers, I still have chef fingers to a point. But look at that. That's nice and crispy.
A little higher.
Chicken is done.
Yeah.
Too high.
No,
There we go.
You were up. Bring it up.
Whoop.
There you go.
Okay. Nice color. All nice and crispy. And the last thing I should do is check my temperature. So I'm going to stick it in my thermometer into the thickest part of the breast and see if it's 165, which it isn't quite yet. I'm 145. So it needs to go a little bit farther. Let's see where we are over here. Yeah, I got 160 over here, but there's still a point where it needs a couple of more minutes. So in the recipe, I do recommend that you remove it at 160 degrees, okay, before the temperature, because they're going to have, what's known as carryover cooking. And so if you take it out of the oven, put a piece of foil over the top and let it rest for 10 minutes while you get the rest of the dinner on the table and get things organized. Just like with any other meat, you always want to, depending on the size, depends how long you want to let it rest and what temperature you bring it out. The chicken breast like that, say 5 degrees, give it 10 minutes, it'll rise to 165. If it's a big roast, like I was doing a prime rib and I was looking for 135 or 140 because I wanted, medium, probably rare in the center, so I have medium rare on the outside. That's going to take 20, 30 minutes, and I'm probably going to pull it out at 120. And it will continue because there's so much mass. It'll continue to cook on the counter if you just lightly cover it with some foil. So that carryover cooking is real important. Again, that's part of that, not overcooking your food. If you cook that turkey at Thanksgiving and make sure that
pops.
It's 165 degrees, then by the time you serve it, and it's going to be way too hot. And if you use those pop-up timers, which if I ever buy one of those, the company that's famous for their pop-up timers, or the pop-up thermometers, theirs are some of the most pumped of all, by the way. Okay, those are in that 20% plus range. That's why they say they stay so juicy. But their thermometers don't even pop typically now until 180, 190 degrees. And that's
safety recommendations.
Yeah, that's recommendations, and that's the the lawyers running the food company, so that limits the liability that they have by making sure that it doesn't
it
come out of
also
the oven
helps
too early.
with the cross contamination.
Hmm?
It's also because of cross contamination to ensure everything is destroyed.
Well, yeah.
It is one of the other reasons.
Okay, but everything dies at 165 degrees for 30 seconds.
Yeah, but if you go
That's all you have to do.
180, you got everything's at least 165.
Okay, we'll discuss that later Mindy, because we are obviously
I
in
hear you.
disagreement over
So
that comment.
Molly
Because
says, I
if
have
I cross contaminated, it would be on the outside, and the outside is obviously much hotter
I
than the
know, I
inside.
know.
So if it's 165 inside, that surface of the chicken or the turkey is already 190, 200 degrees. Okay, so it's
You
all.
win.
Thank you very much.
right on.
Okay, Molly.
So
Okay,
Molly
so that's
says,
it. We'll let this finish cooking, and then I'll take it out, and maybe we'll cut it. Actually, that's our dinner tonight.
Yep.
So,
Molly
Uh,
had a question, honey.
okay, question away.
she says, I have a skinless, boneless chicken breast ready to be cooked tonight. Will this recipe work?
Well, you won't get crispy skin. This will still work. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
But you don't need to do the cornstarch thing on the. You don't want to do that just on the meat. But you can do everything else but that, because I mean, unless you want a crispy exterior of the meat, you
Nothing
can
wrong with
you
it.
can do that. I'd be interested. I normally don't, but you could give that a try. I mean, it would be okay. But the rest of it, the little bit of olive oil, the pepper, the salt-free seasoning on it, and some lemon juice
Might even hold the moisture in
would
it.
all be good. Yes,
Okay.
and the cornstarch will, and he's right on that one, see, will help retain moisture, as that does solidify in the cooking process. Now, if you're going to, are you going to cook it in the oven, Molly? Or were you going to do it in a pan?
Okay, we'll find out when she's ready. Melissa says, yum. Velda says, looks very tasty. Good job, Rob. And I said, what a great tip. Let food continue cooking under foil. Does anyone else do that? And I haven't gotten a response yet.
It also, if you're doing red meats, by letting it set for a while, you coagulate the blood and it doesn't turn as bloody on your plate.
Right. It reabsorbs the juices back into the meat. They settle, where if you've ever done that, if you cook a roast and then you just put it on the counter and start slicing, you get a cutting board filled with juice, which is blood. But if you let it sit again, they redistribute themselves back. It's reabsorbed back into the musculature, and you don't lose as much.
Which
So,
again goes to the sodium potassium flow of the cells.
exactly. So
Very interesting.
yeah.
Mhm.
So I'll say if Molly is going to do that in a pan, the cornstarch would definitely be a winner, because it would be kind of like a little bit of a bready battery thing to give that outside a little bit of crispiness, and seal it in a pan. So, and in the oven, the hot oven, I do my chicken a little bit higher. This is on 375 convection. All right, so it's got that air moving around as well. If you haven't noticed, from last year, we have our new kitchen. Okay, so we got all new equipment since you've seen us last year, and Mindy did a great job. She installed. I'm going to turn the camera. She installed that wall behind everything. The splash.
That
The splash
backsplash?
zone.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah, she put she tiled that herself, and yeah, it really ties everything in and looks really great. So we're happy with that and proud of her. First, it took her a couple of days, and we put in all new electrical as well. That was more time consuming than the stupid tile, getting the electrical to work.
Right on.
Uh,
So Molly says either pan, oven, or even air fryer.
Absolutely, air fryer would be great too, and that way the cornstarch will work real well with the air fryer. That'll protect the chicken in the air fryer. So go for it.
Melissa says you can do the same with steak, Mr. Aortic Hope. I'm not. She's always picking on me. I don't get it. And Melissa then says, "Go Mindy for working on that backsplash. Well done."
Yep. Okay, so I think my chicken's about ready.
See, the husband cooks. I do all the hard work.
We'll discuss that later too. Hard work. That's why my body's falling apart after 45 years in the kitchen.
Good
And you're
job,
still in
Mindy.
the kitchen. Thanks.
Okay, so yeah, looking good here. All my Rudy Tooty vegetables, my chicken breast. Yep. So I'm going to let that just sit for a while.
Can you take the temp again?
Sure, I can take the temp again. You don't want to die at dinner?
No. And we're almost at 4 o'clock here.
See, 162. Okay. So I'm doing really good.
And so presumably you're just
166.
going to cover that with foil and let it finish cooking now?
Yes, I
Yep.
would cover it foil or something to keep the steam in.
Bam.
That'll melt.
No, it won't.
No, on the hot plate.
No,
We'll find out.
I'll go buy a new one.
Okay. There's a cover. It's mainly covering it to keep retain some heat.
Okay, so Christina has a point to make. She
Okay.
says it's not blood running out of rare steak. All blood is drained at the slaughter.
No,
No.
She raises
That is-
cows. This will be interesting.
that is not true.
Take it to the
Not all-
comment section, Christina.
Well, that's why they, the whole, we can keep talking about this, but, the whole thing of kosher meat, because, in the strict Jewish religion, you're not supposed to consume blood. So they salt and soak the meat to remove the blood that is left in the animals. So they salt, and that's where we got the kosher salt from. It's a coarse salt that they rub and coat the meat with, which then pulls the blood out, moisture, and then they soak it in ice water to remove the salt coating and the rest of the blood. But it's never blood free. But there's plasma there, and there's minerals that are in
Cellular
there,
fluid.
but it's all held in blood. I'm sorry to say.
Or cellular fluid.
Yes. So, but they drain a lot of the blood when they do. I believe I've been in the slaughterhouses. I've been there. I've participated. You
A lot
do
comes out.
drain a lot of the blood when they, sever the arteries in the animals, but you can't get it all out unless they let them sit there and drain and drain and drain and drain and drain and drain for I don't know how long. But so hopefully that didn't ruin your taste for meat.
Well, she says
She
it's
grows-
called myoglobin.
You are correct.
Which is a part of blood, right?
Yes.
Yes.
It's not the whole cell anymore.
Yes. So, okay. All right. You guys we're going to wait for me to cut this? I don't think we need to.
Yeah, they want to see how juicy it is.
Okay, let's just do it anyways. We'll jump.
One slice.
Okay. Let me grab some utensils here.
Red pork is in there.
Yes, in the other drawer, I think.
It shouldn't be.
It's not here.
Different.
Okay.
Then use the other one.
Thank you very
Sure.
much. I will. I'll try. Or I just use my fingers like I, chef thing. Just take the tongs. Okay. So you could remove it from the bone if you wish.
Just for information, we bought these breasts and they were almost a pound a piece.
A little bit over.
They were over a pound
Yeah,
a piece.
there were 2 breasts in the package, 2 half breasts, so 1 whole breast, and it was 2.67 pounds of meat. These things are just too huge. Okay.
How long was it in the oven for?
About 45 minutes.
Okay.
There we go. Nice, juicy, moist
Steamy.
chicken. Okay.
That looks delicious.
And it is. I could do the old chef gets the first bite, Or do I share with my bride? No. Oh, ma'am. Yep.
What's Justin Wilson used to say? Ooh-wee.
That's good cooking. On my computer.
So Melissa
Ooh.
says, I'm learning to cook
Oh.
smaller portion for 2.5 and not for a whole family. Adapting recipes.
Well, you cook for a family of 4. I would take half the meal and put it in the freezer and then serve it. That eliminates the potential of not having the second meal. For those of you who are working,
Cook once, eat twice.
cook once, eat twice, or 3 times. Because when I would make a meal for supper, I would take my lunch container and take my lunch portion out before I even served it to the rest of the table. So I'd have lunch for the next day. Then everyone could eat as much as they wanted.
Hey. Here we go.
Melissa says there's too much in there.
So I ain't got nothing else, guys. Next week,
2 weeks.
2 weeks from now, 2 Wednesdays on the 21st of February at 3 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I will be doing some simple bread making, which was requested by someone special to us. We do bread. So I am going to do practice one of the bread formulas that I've already posted online. I'll do our sweet potato bread, and then also probably a second surprise bread. And then Mindy, at this point, well, she's going to talk a little bit about gluten intolerance versus gluten allergies,
And all those white starchy products.
and celiacs. Okay, but that'll be a short one, so it's not going to be an in-depth, but really just talking about the basics of it and why most people probably have sensitivity, not allergies. Okay, because they're not as common as we think. But all in all, that's all I have to say from the Aortic Kitchen. See?
Have a wonderful chicken dinner. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send them to Rob or myself, and we will look for answers.
Drop me a line on Facebook in the Aortic Hope in the group. Just tag me on a question, or Mindy, and we'll keep the talk going. Also, you can join us tomorrow at 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock for Aorta Hangouts. That is every Thursday at 2 o'clock, and everybody is welcome. It's just a good time. It's a little bit different from the support groups. We tried not to talk about our conditions and just have fun and talk to each other as people and friends. We've basically become, a lot of us have become good friends over the year with this program, and the more the merrier. We have a great time. So, and there's no time limit on that either. We've gone as late as 8 o'clock so far is our latest. Sometimes I've made dinner during the program, so extra entertainment. Okay, thank you very much, everybody, and I appreciate your coming to visit with us in the Aortic Kitchen.
Bye.
Bye, all.